Is a sheet there in your seat for the libraries? Can you sign that and give it back to John?
Thank you, Lenny.
Okay, good evening. In the chair's absence as vice chair, I will call the select board meeting to order at 6:01. And the first order of business is the pledge of allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us in that?
Happy to. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. At this point, we will recess the select board and open as the local liquor control board here. Consideration of the application for Honey Child LLC. The applicants are here. Rachel and Matthew, would you like to come up and tell us a little bit about your application?
Sure.
No, there's a microphone over there.
All right, great. Thank you very much. My name is Matt Burge. This is my wife, Rachel. We've been operating Honey Child LLC for about 1.5 years. We operate a catering business out of our home. We primarily do weddings and small events. None of them are on the property. They are all in various venues around the state, some in New Hampshire, most in Vermont. And in the process of running this business, we've had many requests to provide alcohol services at the events. And so we've been exploring for some time how to make this happen. In an effort to make it attractive, we have converted an old horse trailer, which sounds very unconventional. Hopefully everyone got to see some pictures I sent along. And have had extensive conversations with the Liquor and Lottery Board, as well as the health department, in order to make this a reality. Many steps had to be taken in order to get a health board certified with a commercial catering license. That's already been accomplished. And the last step is the Liquor Commission. I've had many conversations with David Hamlin and Martin Prevost in the commission, who do the licensing. And what makes this unconventional is because the catering business operates out of our personal home. And so in order to accomplish this, the board here would need to approve the home base of our trailer, of our unit, to be on our home property and not on a storefront or in a commercial space. And what the requirements required in order to do that, it has to have the ability to have water and electricity. It needs to have bathrooms that are on site. And I actually just had a conversation again with Martin yesterday. I had one when we first started the project with David, and I wanted to speak with somebody else just to make sure I had dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's. And the requirement is that the liquor board needs to be able to come and inspect the unit for all the necessary components. In terms of, since it's on our property, but we would not be operating it on our property, we would need to demonstrate the ability to have restrooms wherever we went, including if it were there on our property. And other than that, I believe we have, in terms of power, electricity, water, and the health board certification. I think we're we've completed all the steps. It really comes down to the unique decision on your part to allow this to its home base to always be on our property. Now, every time we would go to an event, we would have to apply for an outside consumption permit in any town, including Hartford or any other town we would go. And so this unit would sit there. In terms of the liquor board, any liquor would have to be locked up in this unit. What we were told was this facility could be a trailer or a shed, which doesn't sound any better, but would have to house all the liquor. Nothing could remain in our house. So it's as if the business is not in the home, although that's where it's home based out of. It resides in this trailer that sits on the property as this little entity that sort of sits there. It can go out and perform an event and has to return back to its home base. And you all have to approve whether or not it's allowed to sit as its home base there on the property.
Thank you for that kind of overview. I really appreciate it. I'm guessing there are maybe some questions. Do you want to start?
If I may, thank you. So my biggest concerns about this, there've been a lot answered by way of the emails that are taking place. I had concern about traffic in your neighborhood. That's been alleviated because you're not operating it out of your business. But are you going to have deliveries come to your residents, or how do you plan to stock the trailer?
We always, for all of our events, we always go out and shop locally and bring stuff in. We don't have Cisco trucks or commercial deliveries to our home. In all honesty, this is a very small operation. We both work full time, and this is a sort of a dream and a hobby that we're doing on the side. So there are no deliveries that are ever made to our home ever.
Then the other question that I had, a very serious concern, is how do you plan on controlling who gets served the alcohol at the events that you're at? Or are you going to, how do you plan to control that?
So if all the events that we run are, I'll give you some examples. There was like a barn venue in Sharon, or we've done a tent venue in Windsor. All the events, they're not in sort of public gathering places. They are very private. So there's no mixed company. So in terms of, carding people and verifying age.
Yeah, that's my concern. One of my concerns.
Yeah, there would be no mixing. They're private events that we cater. It's not in public spaces.
But anyone that attends a private event, I mean, you still have to verify that they are of age to consume alcohol.
Absolutely. Just like, and I suppose the difference is a local business around here could decide to take, once they have their liquor license, could decide to take the show on the road, for lack of a better expression, and would have all the same requirements.
I
required to do that.
I hold a server's license, so I went through the class myself.
Yeah.
But so you also have to make sure that you have access control and egress control to make sure that that liquor stays within certain areas. What do you have for plans for that nature? I mean, I take it there's only the 2 year. Do you have more staff when you go to events? How do you?
They're typically very small. It's the two of us. Typically, it's some family members who might help us with some of these things.
How do you police people leaving with beverages? If they have alcoholic beverages, how do you police them from leaving the area of the event? That's a concern of mine, because
I totally understand.
You can never know where an event will be held, and if you take a glass of something crossing a roadway, that puts a lot of liability on the town as well as you folks for being a server.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure that you have the adequate controls in place to control the flow of people that are being served.
Yeah, I suppose without giving you a crystal clear answer, every venue is very different. Some places that we've met are very contained barns where they're very clear spaces. For the two of us, we would be operating out of a facility that would be just outside. We'd probably position ourselves to make sure that we didn't have people sort of wandering off.
So every event that you have that you would be going to for this business, you would have to receive an outside consumption permit for, correct?
Everyone.
So that means that every single place that you go to, you would have to submit a detailed map of the areas that you're fully prepared to accept that.
Absolutely, yes. And we have to ensure that there are restrooms available.
Yeah.
And
what are you doing about the restroom that the state's requiring you to have at your facility?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I had a conversation with Mark Provost at the Liquor Commission, and he said they don't actually need to see, for some instances, they actually have these mobile units that exist around the state. He said he is not aware of any in Hartford, but they do have them around the state. Some people bring in like porta potties that have restrooms available.
Right, yeah.
He told me that we don't actually need to bring one. We just need to show a quote that says we have the capability to have one on site because we are not functioning there live.
And then you'll have to excuse me, one more question. When you have the trailer with the alcohol on your premises, if you have leftover alcohol, you're going to have, do you have refrigeration on board the trailer that you're going to have this thing plugged in so it keeps the beverages cool as well?
It's
okay.
Locked and refrigerated. Mm-hmm. And in case we operate fairly infrequently, there is the opportunity to return some if it's for some reason in excess.
Right. It'll definitely be a test case for Hartford. So, like I said, there's concerns to have.
I understand,
but
it's unconventional.
because it is unconventional, is our first that I can remember in my history having come before us.
Any other members have questions? I mean, I would just like to state that, I mean, having worked in catering for years and have worked with other establishments that have done bar catering service, like this is, I think the only thing that's different here is that, so instead of like a restaurant or a hotel that has a liquor license and is then applying for event, I'm curious to know if specifically if you need outdoor consumption license or event permits for your offsite events.
An outdoor consumption permit.
Okay, so maybe it's just the terminology maybe has changed a little since my familiarity, but that would go just through the state or administratively, like those don't come before us each time.
I think unless it's in Hartford, like if the event is in Hartford, then we would request a caterer or how.
Oh, because it's in a different location each time.
So, but if
'cause-
it's in like Bethel, we would,
Yeah.
go to there.
Interesting,
So,
okay.
So that raises another question for you. I'm sorry, but do you have to get approval from these other towns then that you're going to serve in?
Yes. And every organization, every other caterer in Hartford who I'll name the caterer at the top of the hill, does a wonderful job. If they decided to go to Woodstock to host a caterer wedding in a field somewhere, they would have to apply to Woodstock.
But
They have to do the same thing
not for a full outdoor consumption license. They would
Right.
just need to, they would
for
need
the
to,
permit.
for the outdoor, like a catering permit. So I
Correct.
think what we're talking about might be two
Yeah.
different things. Like, I don't think you're gonna have to come before us every time you do an event in Hartford
I think it's a request, yeah.
That's absolutely correct. This is one time in front of you, from what I've been told.
for the
from
first and
Commission.
third class
So,
license.
where does this hold the town liable because we're issuing a permit if it's used outside of the town? Do
Can I
we
give
have
you-
any liability in regards to that?
Oh,
Because
that,
we're issuing a permit that they're gonna use the trailer, which we've permitted. We're basically permitting the trailer, but yet they're taking the trailer outside of the town of Hartford.
But they're suggesting whenever they do so, they're getting a permit or approval from the host community.
I understand that. I just didn't know if there's any liability on the town's behalf if we.
My understanding is that it wouldn't be any different than any other caterer who is in town
Yeah.
and going to another location,
and
which that liability, if there were any, would already exist for every other caterer who's.
Okay, I'm not trying to.
I totally- it's a great
question. I totally understand.
like, for example, like Babe's Bar in Bethel, they have their liquor license in Bethel. They've come to serve at events at the Briggs Opera House. And so they'll get an event permit. They don't have to come before us. They'll get an event permit through the town and the state. And then they can do that, but they don't have to get their first and third class license in Hartford to do that occasion. So I think, yeah, the main piece, one additional question I would just have about the property itself is, and obviously for privacy reasons, you don't need to disclose, but like, I would presume that you have adequate security for this trailer, because obviously that would be a fun place for rowdy teenagers to want to break into.
We actually have-
We
We kept security cameras on our home and the trailer is fully locked. I mean, to the extent that someone would break into any business, you
Yeah.
could get in, but you'd have to really work at it.
Well, and then just one final thing, I'm sure it's crossed your radar in your experience, but when you say you buy all your products locally, you know you can't go to New Hampshire to buy your alcohol.
Absolutely,
Okay, great. That would be a not approved practice. Cool, okay, any other questions before we consider vote on the application?
I'm very curious to see, I mean, you guys have had extensive conversations with the Vermont Liquor Control, which makes me feel very comfortable approving this. I would have liked to have been a fly on the window when all the conversations took place to understand what was said though, because
And they will
But,
still have to get approval from
I
the state prior.
I understand that, yeah, but it's nice to know that your due diligence is being taken and
I appreciate that. We're really trying to do this the right way and it's a big learning curve for us too, honestly.
Yeah.
So it's been a learning experience.
I guess I'll be happy to make a motion if
Okay.
you're looking for one.
Go ahead, please.
So I make a motion, we approve an application for Rachel Burge and Matthew Burge doing business as Honeychild LLC, 139 Hillridge Road, Whitewood Junction, Vermont, 05001, for first, third class license. You're not looking for the public consumption at this, no, I guess third class is, yeah. So first and third class.
Okay, we have a
License.
motion from Lanny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you all very much.
Good luck.
And-
Be interesting to know how the model works for you guys. So.
Yeah, we'll check back in.
I may not be here, but that's okay.
Thank you all very much. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we will close the liquor control board portion and reopen the, there's no cannabis control before us tonight, so then we'll open the regular select board meeting. Any need for changes to the agenda? Okay, and then we will go to public comment. We will begin in the room and then we'll see if anyone on Zoom has questions. Any members of the public have comment in the room? Okay, anyone online on Zoom, if you have public comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move on to select board comments. Start down your end.
Yep. So this is potentially my last official Hartford Select Board member as a regular meeting of the Hartford Select Board. Potentially. I'd just like to thank the citizens of the town of Hartford for your support over the last 4 years, having your faith in me to elect me to this position. I realize that I've made mistakes in the past and I'll own those. I endeavor to do the best I can for Hartford in every decision that I've made. Again, I appreciate your support and I only wish the best for Hartford moving forward. In addition, I will say that last night at the candidates forum that we had, I found it rather disturbing actions by both current and former select board members in what I viewed as attempts to tear people down that are willing to step up to public office. This is a very challenging role that we have within the town of Hartford. And it's one that is not taken lightly. And we should be about building people up and encouraging people, and perhaps so much even as grooming people for the select board. And to see people get torn down, or I might even go so far, they're not attacked, but they were torn down by current members of the board and past members, is very disheartening. It's not behavior that is becoming of officials, and it is certainly not in the character of a welcoming and inclusive community that we want to have here in Hartford. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lanny. Ada, any select board comment?
No, I have no comments.
Okay, Mary?
Sure. Although I'm uncontested, I do want to say thank you at this point in time, because I've appreciated all the staff and everyone that has anything to do with the town for all their hard work and for their expertise. I think they do a great job. I feel like I'm in the presence of professionals when I'm here. I also want to say thanks to all the candidates for coming out and despite or in spite of wherever it falls to the persons who will be taking over select board seats. I encourage other people who didn't make it this time to continue to work toward that hopeful expectation and to be participants in reading agendas and coming to meetings if they can, and to come before us if they have concerns. I think that's really important. And then finally, I want to say something very special to Kim, because she'll be leaving the board. And I think she's an excellent, excellent select board member who comes up with amazing things that I wouldn't think about. And I just wanted to cite that about a year ago, I went to Bugby to get a COVID shot, and I was sitting next to a gentleman, and I didn't know him and he didn't know me, but he was very impressed. He said, I really think Kim Souza does an excellent job. I just wanted to say that to you, Kim. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Anything, Brandon?
Yes, just, well, wanted to echo the comments here that those who are leaving the board, such as Kim, and those who may be leaving the board, such as Lanny, I've enjoyed very much serving on this board with you both. And Kim, thank you for all of your expertise that you shared. It's been a real pleasure to serve with both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon. And I do have a little, just brief kind of this is my final meeting as a select board member. So I mostly want to thank the voters of Hartford for giving me the opportunity to serve on the select board for 3 terms. And people often say it must be such a thankless job, but in my experience, I've been really humbled by the hundreds of people who have gone out of their way to thank me for my public service for the past 7 years. So I appreciate that. And what I also appreciate is how fortunate we are that the town now has such a steady and capable leadership, with John Haverstock as our town manager and the incredible team of staff and department heads and a multitude of volunteers serving on town committees and commissions. And going forward, I do hope that future select boards will continue to prioritize balancing the critical infrastructure, capital investments, and operating expenses with the challenges of the rising cost of living for everyone in Hartford. And I know that it's possible to simultaneously prioritize the nuts and bolts of local government while also holding true to the values of treating this earth and all of the people on it with dignity, respect, and compassion. Some people call it walking while chewing gum at the same time. I call it being a capable human being, and I know that is something we can all do. I look forward to tuning in and seeing the town progress with this very capable and steady leadership throughout these wildly challenging times, and I'll try not to chime in too often. Thank you. Okay. Oh, okay, so we are on to appointments next. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 appointments for the new Hartford 250th Commemoration. And I guess we're starting with Dennis Brown. Come on up.
Here I am, Dennis Brown of Hartford. So I'm very interested in this committee. I was at the bicentennial in '76. I was 15 then.
Wow.
It's going to be a pleasure to serve on this. I think I probably won't be around for the next one, but I love how it's getting started with the commemoration and recognizing that Native Americans were here before us, and we're being sensitive to that. I think we're planning on a bunch of patriotic and historic things for events. And so I'm pretty excited about this, and I hope you will be too. I did have a question. None of these appointments have a time on them, a date.
I'm told that they lapse in 2027. I'm not certain of the date, if not sooner. So I don't know that there's an end date, but it won't be any further than 2027.
Yeah, I thought it was the last event that they hold, that it lapses then.
I just think of appointments having a start and an end date to
Mhm,
them, so I
mhm.
didn't know. Do you want to put down like 2027 or 2028 or some such thing?
Well, I'm trying to find the.
Gwen's got
Gwen?
her hand up.
Have the chart.
You've got a person who might have some input on that.
Okay, hey Gwen.
Yes. Hi, I'm Gwen Tuson. I'm from Hartford. We can end when the Vermont Commission ends, and unfortunately, I didn't bring my computer, so I can't look up that date. But you know, the Vermont State Commission, I believe, ends at the end of 2027, so we can end by then if we don't decide to end sooner. So that would make sense.
December 1st
Okay,
of
so we should
2027.
put in December 31st of 27, this will end.
Yeah, don't make it
Okay.
official till I look it up. 'cause I didn't bring my
Well,
computer.
that'll definitely cover us. We're not gonna go to
Yeah.
2028. so
No, no.
That will mean that we won't have to come back. Okay,
I'm sure.
and
that
I'm
chart
ready for any
is-
questions the board might have.
Any questions from board members?
I'm disappointed.
I know, well,
All right, I'll ask you a question.
yeah, I mean, I'm also just kind
All
of
right.
search for that charge, because we did approve a charge for the
Yes,
committee, right?
yes.
So just trying to locate that. So if you have a question in the meantime.
All right,
that'll
Mr. Brown.
take some time.
Tell us what you feel is the most important thing about Hartford's history.
Well, heritage, where we were, where we've come, where we're headed. So it's a bright future, I think, here in town.
Thank you, Dennis.
Happy now? Okay.
One thing I'm wondering is, why don't, if you're comfortable, why don't we hear from each of the applicants, and then we can do
Move them
the
to slate.
motions?
Yeah, move them as a
We could
slate.
do it as a slate.
Let's do it as a slate. It's a lot easier.
Sure, and then in the meantime, I might be able to find the charge and have that official date. While still trying to pay laser attention.
So
So
Earl,
who's
Hatley?
next?
Earl,
Yeah, so Earl, thank you.
Quiet and no buck. I'm Earl Hatley. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Abenaki Nation of the Missisquoi with Shawnee and Cherokee heritage. I guess I'm the Indian on the group because they wanted to include us in this commemoration. I have a project in Quechee, the Abenaki Garden Project, which I'm hoping will be one of the open house events for the commemoration. So we're planning to have Abenakis there and to show people Abenaki culture and agriculture. So yeah, I'm on the Resilient Hartford Commission. And so this will be a second gig for the town. Happy to answer any questions.
Any board members have questions?
I don't, Dennis requested one, so.
I have a quick question, Earl. Are there places in Hartford that are like sacred spaces historically? And I've always wondered this and tried to get in touch with the Winter. Yeah,
Winter Center. Yeah.
Winter Center, and they haven't gotten back to me, but
Oh, really?
yeah.
Okay.
And so what I'm wondering is if there could be like, if there are, could there be like tours to some of these places and what might have gone on? I don't know, but I just, I had heard, I don't know where, that out here Lyman Point Park, that there was either a sacred space or something that at one point in time. I was just wondering if you know anything about it.
Yes, you're right. The Lyman Park is a sacred spot for us. That was the canoe village. We were a port for trade with Native nations from Canada to the other end of the Connecticut River. The river was the super highway. And we had Lyman Park, and on both sides of the river, we had lots of canoes, a village here growing corn, beans, and squash and other plants. So it was agricultural area. And but it was a canoe port for trade.
Okay.
And so this was a major trading post. As well, when settlers started coming in, they started settling here and up the White River to Royalton and beyond. And they utilized the canoe port for the settlers that had corn that they needed to take to the granary down the river for grinding. They would come and we would help them get down the river. They could use our canoes, and so we helped the settlers survive.
Okay.
And the early ones, you know, the first ones that came, they were, after a while it got bad for us, but in the start we were all tight. And so this is the sacred spot. There are other and a sacred spot that we can show the public. There are other sacred spots around the area which I wouldn't want to tell you about because we're worried about looting and things like that.
Right.
So we want to protect those places. But yes, that's the big one. And that really is the history of this place.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think like if this could be the spark of a resource that not that this commission has to really like do all the work to provide the pre 250-year history, but maybe it's something that eventually like the Historic Preservation Committee could, Historic Preservation Commission could be tasked with like a place-based just history. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I want that, you know, like maybe eventually we will have a, you know, we can, the 250th commemoration is only the last 250 years, and maybe what we really need is a 500th commission.
I wasn't here for that.
There was Earl.
It's at least 12,000.
Or 12,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
this is like,
I mean, we were here while the ice was still here.
Yeah.
You know,
I
and
mean,
we have
this-
stories about that.
our community needs to
yeah.
know these
We do.
things, and I guess my point is just saying like, you don't have to do all the work, but I hope our town does the work to
Absolutely.
really recognize the
Absolutely.
history pre 250
Yeah,
years.
because in our language, we have names for the mammoth and all the, you know, the big animals that were here once upon a time, and the ice, and when the lake was, what they call Lake Champlain now was salt water, and all the different animals that were in it at that point in time, we still have in our language. I would also refer you to Queechee, to where we have the Abatement Garden. That's also another ancient village in the area, and that's why I'm wanting to take folks there, is to show them the other ancient village site, you know, here close to Hartford, where the garden is. It was also an agricultural area at that time, and the village was between there and the Otoquechee River at the mouth of the gorge, and then going down the river around where all the golf courses is now. That was all village and agriculture, and we determined that to be about 6,000 years old.
Yeah, that's amazing, and thank you for applying to be on this commission.
Absolutely.
Could see it.
I did find the bylaws, so I have that up in front of me, and so when we're ready to, and let's see, so.
What are the dates?
It ends September 2027, September 1st, 2027 or earlier.
Oh, and I would mention that also during this period, there's going to be another event at Lyman Park with sponsored by the University of speakers.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, is Linda Miller here?
Linda is in Hawaii.
Oh, good for her.
So
She tried to get her to Zoom, but
she might, she's gonna try to Zoom, but that's.
Different
not
hours.
reliable.
Yeah, it's probably.
She's probably out surfing.
Uh-huh.
2 o'clock,
Right.
2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, and Gwen, you are up next.
Yes, I'm Gwen Tuson. I was a elementary school kid back in 1976, so that's why I'm here. I've been a history buff ever since. So, but yes, one of the interesting things about the Vermont Commission's work is they have a theme about the land over time. So they really are looking at the big picture of the 250, because it's the commemoration of our country's 250th, but you can look at it from a point of view like our land over time. And you could look at things like, you know, humans are very habitual. The original settlers here settled at Lyman Point, and, you know, then the settlers who came from Europe, guess where they went? Lyman Point. You know, there's a reason why they went to Lyman Point, you know. We tend to follow some of the same patterns over and over, you know, or you can look at things like who decides who owns the land. And you can look at the original folks who moved here. And then you can look at things like, you know, the fellow who burned himself down in Heartland because of the eminent domain, or all these other little interesting things about, you know, does New York colony, New Hampshire colony, Massachusetts colony, or the Canadians own Vermont? You know, there's all these other things that went on. You know, at one point, Hanover and Lebanon wanted to join Vermont and not be with New Hampshire colony. You know, so all these, there's so many different things about who decides who owns what. That's part of our history. So there's so many different things you can look at when we're looking at this history. So, but we're excited about, you know, right now we're getting into really planning things like our Memorial Day and events like the open house with the Abenaki Garden in Quechee. So there's a lot we can do, and we're going to have fun with it. So we're happy to bring this in a time when some things in our environment right now are very chaotic. We're hoping to bring a little togetherness.
Thank you.
Indeed, thank you. And then Patti, Patti Crimmin-Greenan, is that you? Come on up.
not a big speaker.
That's okay.
So I am a Vermont resident and I do live here in Hartford. I was born in Windsor. And so when I saw that this committee, actually, I was elected by Bugby. I serve on the board at the Bugby Senior Center, and I was elected by Bugby to join this committee to help keep them informed of some events and activities that they might be interested in. Actually, the Abenaki Garden as a possible tour for our seniors, and you know, I don't want to give everything away, but we have a couple other plans as well. So I'm pretty excited just to promote it, be part of it, communicate it. Just, and I won't ask any questions.
Okay, so I think we should probably table Linda till she's back in town, her application, and I don't anticipate any issue with it, but it's just our practice to not appoint a new appointment without them being in attendance. And given that, so then it would be the appointment beginning February 25th, 2025 and ending September 1st, 2027 or sooner. The commission can have up to 7 members, so people can still apply, like there's still vacancies, and those hopefully will get posted as vacancies available on the town website and other sources. Any other questions before?
I'll make a motion.
Do you want to do it as a slate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Marie.
All right. I move that the select board appoint Dennis Brown, Earl Hatley, Gwen Tuson, Patti Crimmin-Greenan to the Hartford 250th Commemoration Committee beginning February 25th, 2025, ending September 1st, 2027, or before that date.
Okay, got a motion by Mary. Any second?
Second it.
Second by Lanny. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. 5-0. Thank you
Thank you,
so
folks.
much, you
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Really, really appreciate. Can't wait to see the programming and.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
All right.
Don't leave us out of the loop. We want to know more.
So that brings us to the town manager's report.
Yes, it'll be pretty brief because we don't have SIGX. This is an off week for us, of course. On Monday, February 24th, last night, we had a budget and candidates night at the high school auditorium. Our next event in the cycle of town meeting is a Saturday morning meeting at 10 a.m., March 1st, at the high school gymnasium. And that's the town and school district meeting, also known as town meeting, which will be moderated by Chuck Worcester, and we'll have presentations by both select board leadership and school board and superintendent leadership. Town offices and services will be closed on Tuesday, March 4th for Election Day, which will be held also at the high school gymnasium. There will be a select board reorganization meeting on Thursday, March 6th. The next regular meeting of the select board will take place on Tuesday, March 18th. And this is the very last meeting of this particular select board. So I'd like to thank retiring Vice Chair Kim Souza for a very enjoyable collaboration over these last 17 months. I've really enjoyed working with you. And I'd also like to thank the other two incumbent members whose current terms are concluding, Mary and Lanny. Best wishes to you both on the campaign trail, and good luck to all the other candidates running for an opportunity to serve their neighbors through select board service. So thanks to all for what you do for the town. Thanks in particular, Kim, for rising above and being such an integral part of leading Hartford for the many years you've done it.
My pleasure, feelings mutual, John. I do have a question relating to, do we need to do a motion to have the chair sign a pay manifest in between?
Yes, Gail had
Gail
been
is
consulted about that, and she had suggested that as long as we've got that March 6th reorganization meeting, that could probably suffice. It's one of the reasons we're meeting tonight, to kind of shorten the gap between the February 17th meeting and the March 18th meeting, with a meeting so that we could conduct some of the town's business. But maybe Gail will chime in, but my expectation was to just get the consent agenda items approved at that organizational meeting on March 6th.
Great. Okay. Any other questions for the town manager? Lance?
John, if you get a chance to check in with the both our staff and with our legal in terms of the addition of a select board member to the town clerk,
Yes, I've gotten some input from staff. I haven't yet heard from the town's attorney. I will be seeing him in person tomorrow and hope to get him to commit to some kind of written feedback for the board to consider about the pros and cons of having select board participation in union negotiations. So the answer is, I haven't heard from the lawyer yet.
you care to share what staff has or not at this point?
There's some concerns about the line between staff and the select board. And there's some concerns that maybe the town manager is the bridge between those two entities. And as long as the town manager apprises perhaps an executive session about the steps in the process and giving you occasional updates, that maybe that should be sufficient. I can see it both ways. As I mentioned at the last meeting, by having the select board involved in the process, it means that there won't be too many surprises, because the select board member who would be participating would be able to vouch that it was a good, fair and open process, and might put his colleagues or her colleagues at ease when a time came to approve a deal. One suggestion as a compromise had been floated that maybe a select board member be invited to observe the negotiations, but not to participate in them. That's something, again, that I'd like to explore with the attorney and get his opinions about. So suffice to say, to the extent that the board didn't want to take action, for example, to appoint an ethics complaint recipient because of the closeness of the election. For that same kind of reasoning, I would think that it would be the new board that would make the decision about whether they want representation on union negotiations and who that might be. But I am pursuing getting the information. I've shared with you what I have for now, and I'll share with the board what I learned from the attorney as early as tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we will move into board report motions and ordinance, including the year-to-date financial review. And Gail is on. Are you able to share screen, or anyway, just not go whenever you're ready, Gail?
Sure. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
hear you. Maybe Jam, can you see her too?
Am I good?
There we go. Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. I'm Gail Ostrat, the Finance Director for the Town of Hartford, for those who don't know me. And first things first, yes, motion to have the Select Board Chair sign the payroll would be great. Payroll is released on March 6th, so it'll be the day of your organizational meeting. And I think as long as the majority of the board that are still sitting there is okay with it, we could wait and do it on the 6th. So I guess that's a question that needs to be answered, I guess, or
Does it, because that's a Thursday, would it delay the payroll being actually issued if we didn't, if the board didn't do it until that night?
well, legally, we can't do that. We can't delay it. However, also legally, we're required to make sure that employees are paid before midnight on the 6th. But normally what happens when we transmit it to the bank, because it is a short week for everybody, that the transfers will go through Thursday morning. So that's the biggest challenge. By the time that the board approves it, the transfers will already have happened.
Okay, should we just make a motion then?
Yeah, I think so. You could authorize the chair to sign off and then have it ratified by the board at a subsequent meeting.
Sure. So what's the date of the actual paper? Like can you give us the phrasing for the motion, Gail?
Sure. It's to authorize the board chair to approve payroll for the time period of February 16th through March 1st, with AP being dated March 6th. AP and payroll, excuse me, accounts payable and payroll being dated March 6th.
Okay. Should we go ahead and knock that out? Is it okay?
I mean, we didn't warn it on the meeting, but it's a fundamentally important and non-controversial matter.
Anyone have objections to this petition, Lanny?
No.
Mary, do you want to make it, or I've got it if you want me to.
February 16th through March 6th.
March
March
1st.
With the AP and payroll, the accounts payable and payroll dated March
6th. Yeah.
6th.
So you said, okay, dated March 6th.
Yeah. I think that's basically the date that it should-
Okay. I move that the select board authorize the board chair to approve payroll, AP and payroll dated March 6th for the term February 16th through March 1st, 2025. Is that correct?
I think so. That sounds
Correct.
good, Gail? Yeah. Is there, there's a motion from Mary. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second from Ida. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then you can just put it on the March 6th agenda. to
Yes,
ratify it.
ratified.
Great. Okay, thank you. So now we can move on to the financial review. Gail.
Yes, I apologize for not being there in person. Those of you who saw me last night, I'm limping around. I had a little bit of an accident, so I needed to put my foot up for a while. But with that being said, I'm here tonight to present the December 2024 financials. And just a little bit of housekeeping, how the financials work. As a reminder that financials are available the month following. So for December, we can't close it out until January because we don't get all the bills until the following month to close it out. And so this being the first meeting in February that I could get on, here we are. And what we look at is our glide path, and our glide path is a representation of how many months that we're into our fiscal year. And given that our fiscal year begins on July 1st, we are looking at the first 6 months. So we're looking at a 50% glide path. And what that means is that we are hopeful that most of our expenses are within 50% of the budgeted amount that we have. And the revenues are a little bit different because for our tax bills, we only send them out once a year. So they're sent out, in July. And they have 2 installments, one being in August and one being in February. So when we issue the bills in July, it's one big revenue amount that is recorded because we do it on an accrual basis and not a cash basis. So with that being said, I have provided all of the financial reports for both the general fund and the enterprise funds, and just going to go through at a high level, and then when I get done with each fund, I'll give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for the general fund, looking at where we were at for 12/31/24, we have billed out 23 million and some change, and the amount that was budgeted was 21 million and some change. And keeping in mind with that is that part of that we do have abatements that come in, we have changes that come in, so that number is very, very fluid. And at first glance, it's like, wow, we're 2 million ahead of where we should be. But as I said, that is a fluid number, and we do have changes as it goes along. So, but there are no concerns with that. And as far as the expenses go, we're at 48% of what we had budgeted for the entire year. So that's well within the glide path, and there aren't any concerns at this time with that. Questions before I move on to the next thing for the general fund?
Ida had her hand up. Go
sorry.
ahead, Ida.
Just, Gail, that's helpful that there's no overall concerns. Do you want to speak to any of the line items that are above 50, or should we just not worry about those all? Or
if you would like to, we certainly can. Some of the obvious ones, for town hall, I don't think that there's any secret that we have an issue with our HVAC system, and that is causing it to be running over. We will be supplementing it the best that we can with the reserve account that we've established for the town hall. However, we don't want to draw that down to a minimal amount because the goal is in a few years to be able to actually replace the HVAC system. So that part of it, we don't have a lot of control of it until we get the HVAC system where it needs to be. It will continue to run over, and it'll be the decision of the town manager as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, whether or not that he would like to make transfers from other departments, other GL codes to supplement that shortfall. One of the other ones, the judicial services, that's only paid once a year. It's actually paid in July. It's a special check run that we have to do. That includes all of the one-time things that are paid at the beginning of the year. We have payroll, there's HR, human, can't even speak, health insurance. There's stuff that has to be paid at the beginning of every month. But this particular one for judicial is only paid once a year. And we actually just got the bill for fiscal year 26. And it was quite the surprise because we only budgeted 100,000, but it came in at 116,000. So unfortunately, we don't get that information until after the budget process is completed and we're ready to present it to the voters. And let's see, and debt is based on the amortization schedules. We don't have control, obviously, when the payments are due. However, they are coming in as we budgeted based on the amortization schedule. And let me see. Property and liability insurance, those are always paid the month actually before they're due, similar to the health insurance. Example being for the January premium, we have to pay that in December. So that is a little bit higher than where it should be. I'm not sure if there's any other, sorry, go ahead.
That's great. That's great. No, thanks for adding some of those details. Appreciate it.
Maybe did you have a question?
Nope, she covered it.
Okay, anyone else?
Great job, Gail.
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, so then we're going to move on to the delinquent tax balance. This is something that's always been a topic of conversation, and I've included it with my reporting since I began here. And as you can, oh, do you want me probably to share my screen and move down through it? Is that more helpful? Because I'm just kind of talking and you're looking at me.
It might be for public. I mean, we're all looking at it on our screens.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Okay, so delinquent tax balance, you can see the last few years, the last 3 years, where we were at as of December 31st. I also have the information.
Gail?
Yep.
Sorry, would you share that to this?
Oh.
That way the people in the audience or out there in TV land could see it, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I haven't done this in a while.
I'm happy to share it from here if that's easier.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Let's see. You see it?
Yep.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Okay, so let me start over. So delinquent tax balance, you'll see here in front of you the last 3 years as of December 31st. I also have the information that's available as of today regarding the second installment that was due at the beginning of February. And as of right now, we're at a balance of 2.5 million. Compared to last year, we were at 2.3 million. And our end goal before we end the fiscal year on June 30th is to be at $1 million or less. And we've been successful at that for the past few years since I've been here. And that's kind of the goal that we're at. We're uncertain as to why it's a little bit higher. You know, it's right now we're looking at 200,000 more than we were last year. And I know that the town manager's office, who's a tax collector, it has been a delinquent tax collector. They do their process and send out notifications, and we're waiting. We know that it's a very difficult time for many residents, and being patient, and also providing payment plans as requested and as needed.
I wonder if a small portion of the difference might be simply that each year the budget is larger. And so even if there's the same number of delinquent taxpayers, the amount's going to be more because there's more taxes that we're trying to collect.
Right.
Possibility.
Very well could be. Any questions on the delinquent tax balance before I move down to the local option tax?
Just that you're pursuing tax sale options that have been kind of recessed since pandemic.
Well, that's right. I think since COVID began, first there was compassion for people in difficult circumstances, knowing that, of course, the town was generally protected by equity and the properties that we were taxing. Then I think it became a situation where so many of our taxpayers were getting COVID relief funds that were either paying them directly so that they could pay their taxes, but also they were paying the town directly for both property taxes and utility payments. So there hadn't been, I don't think, much appetite until I came on board to kind of kickstart the tax sale process. But I'm wanting to return us to normalcy, a normal footing, which means that tax sales and shutoffs are an important, although unpleasant, part of the process to provide some discipline and a message in the community that people need to meet their obligations as a matter of fairness to their neighbors. And so we've engaged an attorney who helped us pre-COVID with tax sales, and he and I and Lana are working out a regime to meet the latest changes from the state legislature on exactly how the tax sale process must work. There have been some changes that are, I think, intended to be more helpful to people in difficult circumstances, and we need to abide by those changes.
Great. Lanny?
John, in terms of the delinquent taxes, do you know what percentage of the people that have delinquent taxes actually have a payment plans established with?
It's a small percentage, Lanny. We do notify people that that's always an option, as is abatement,
Right.
where there's written language in all of these notices letting people know, for example, that there's 5 categories or so that would entitle them to a possibility of an abatement, and that we stand ready to negotiate payment arrangements with them. That has been kind of bolstered by this legislation. And so the notices about payment options are even more robust going forward.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Gail, I think you can continue.
Okay, so moving on to local option tax. This is another item that several board members in the past has been interested in it, as well as residents. You can see the history that we've had going back to FY22 and where we're at so far for FY 2025. And even though I'm reporting on December 31st, 2024, we did receive the February payment in, which was the $94,451.23. So I wanted to make sure I included that. And as of 12/31/24, we had $830,871.56 in that particular account. And of that amount, we still have $200,000 that's committed to the ambulance for FY25 for the fire department, and as well as $30,000 that's committed to the beautification of town villages. I believe that the ambulance is close to being ready. And I know that the Parks and Recs department, along with the planning department, have been taking steps to work towards the beautification of the town villages. So after those commitments that have already been approved by the voters for FY25, we have a balance of $600,871.56, of which on the ballot this year, there is a request to the voters to spend $500,000 for the equipment and for Parks and Recreation, Public Works, and the fire department, as that was discussed at the budget and candidate meeting last night.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Is interest on those accounts just accumulated within those amounts?
They're accumulated within that particular account, correct? You can't put them into the general fund or any other fund. They have to stay within that particular.
So interest earned on the local option tax is used for the same purposes that's collected?
That's correct.
Thank you. And Lanny has a question, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm maybe getting ahead of you, Gail, but you have a report somewhere on the ARPA funds somewhere?
I don't have a report on that because I have made a request to the town manager, and I believe I mentioned it at the last meeting that we had, that I believe that it's a great recommendation that once the new sitting board is in place, that on a monthly basis that our update is provided. And so everybody, again, for new board members, so they are aware of what's going on. The other part that goes along with it is that we had made the board had made a motion at the end of 2024 that any unspent ARPA funds would be able to be used to offset the tax rate for 2026. And as we're getting closer to the end of 2025, it's important for everybody to be held accountable for their projects and what they have going on. And if something has significantly changed with those projects, that we need to be transparent, the board needs to be aware of it, And there may come a point where the board may say that we want to withdraw our commitment to that because, you know, the project's not moving forward as expected. Could be internal, could be external factors. And so that's why there's not one here, because I did have that conversation with the town manager. And as I said, I did mention it at a previous meeting that that would be a recommendation to make sure everybody is being transparent and accountable for those funds, because we don't want to lose them.
Thank you very much.
And then before I move on to the solid waste, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, there was a couple questions last night at the budget and candidate night about the unassigned fund. And I just wanted to, just really briefly, I won't stick on it too long. This is my 10th budget cycle, and every year that we've done the budget cycle, we have proposed, and the board has agreed and approved to transfer funds from the unassigned fund to supplement the general fund. It's been a very strong recommendation that you only utilize the unassigned fund for one-time purchases, not ongoing expenses, because as we know, you pick up an ongoing expense once the unassigned fund is gone, similar to the ARPA funding, that still needs to be covered. And so still strongly recommend doing one-time purchases. And with that being said, since I've been here, we have proposed and it's been approved to do transfers, but we have not utilized that funding. And when I say that, I mean that the transfer hasn't been done. So example being in fiscal year 2025, in the budget was approved to have a transfer of $2 million. If we continue on the path that we're at and we come in under what we had projected for our expenditures, that will reduce, excuse me, if we come in under the expenditures and also come in over on the regular revenue, then we won't need to make that transfer. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification on that part. Any questions on that?
Yeah, so the 1.3 million that was a transfer out, that you answered my question by email and said it was for the Fire Station 2 bond proceed. So that was not an unassigned fund transfer?
That's correct. It falls, the classification of transfers for funds, the bond proceeds fall under that classification, which is also under the same classification as the unassigned fund.
Okay. That was
So no, we have not used any of the unassigned fund, and we would not use it until we got in a situation, hopefully never do, that we would need to make that transfer.
Great. I still don't understand why the unassigned fund doesn't then just get bigger and bigger, but I know that's been explained to me, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the general fund before I move to the solid waste? So solid waste fund is Fund 30, and we know that we've had many, many discussions about the solid waste fund, so I'm not going to belabor it too much, because I also believe that we'll have probably another presentation from the Public Works Director coming up soon on that. So as far as the revenues go, we budgeted $647,000. And as of 12/31/2024, we have billed $205,286. So that's
not enough.
Where we're at with that. And then as far as expenditures go, we're at 55% at our glide path. The total budget for 2025 is $652. And as of 12/31, we've expended $393,445. And then the other part that I've added in here, again, a piece that people have asked about is the receivables. And as of 12/31/24, we're at $15,134 versus last year we were at $4,622. not any significant concerns here. No more than normal, I should say. And I'm confident with the contractor that the town has hired that will hopefully come up with a good path forward for this fund in whatever direction the board and the voters choose to take.
I have a question on the expenditure line for the solid waste. I'm not quite sure I'm following the math. If there's a budgeted figure of 881,000, and as of the end of December, we've only spent 393,000, so it would seem like we've used less than half of the budget thus far.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah, where it says percent of budget used, maybe should be percent of budget available.
That would seem to me to be the case.
I certainly could have made a mistake.
Good catch.
While we're waiting, Kim, I'm going back to an email that you shared with us on December 19th that Bonnie Dow had answered one of your questions about the unassigned. I feel like I have to read her description of what the unassigned fund is every time this comes up, but it is helpful because it's not, yeah, I mean, I'll just leave that out there for board members. Okay, yeah.
That's 44%.
It is. I was just gonna say I made an error. I apologize for that. Hopefully I didn't do that going forward.
No worries at all.
We'll figure it out.
The numbers that are there are correct though, and as you can see, the reports from our software support the actual numbers. So I do apologize for that.
Gail, if you don't mind, since there's a lull here, do you have any reason to attribute 15,134 for receivables versus last year at the same time being considerably less? Is there any, maybe Public Works can address that? Do you have any reason to understand why the number's so high this year compared to last?
I can't speak to that, Lanny. I believe that Brian's on and he may be able to speak to it. Certainly could be a matter of timing of when things got billed. I apologize. That's not something I can.
Brian had told me that he was not probably going to participate tonight since Chris could handle his item number C solo.
He is off.
Is he?
Oh, he was. Maybe he's not anymore.
I mean, it's a huge, it's a huge difference there. I'm just wondering if the number is accurate, I am assuming, but it's just a huge difference between last year and this year.
I mean, we just had.
I can certainly check into that and I can let the town manager know tomorrow as soon as I hear back from Public Works and he can communicate that to the board.
Thank you. I don't doubt the numbers. I just wonder why.
Oh, no, absolutely. I appreciate the question. So then moving on to the White River Water Fund, which is Fund 50. The budget for 2025 is 1,200,000 and some change. And as of 12/31, we've billed out 726,728. And as we move into the water funds and the wastewater funds, I just want to remind everybody that not every fund is billed every month. So it alternates, meaning we could be doing Fund 50, which is the water fund, and Fund 60, which is White River wastewater at the same time versus you have the Quechee water and Quechee wastewater. So some of the numbers may look like, especially the revenues will look a little bit awkward, and so will the accounts receivable, because depending on when the billing for those particular funds go out and when the financials are generated, which the bills go out at the first of every month. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. As far as the expenditures go, the total budget is 1.2 million and some change. As of 12/31/24, we were at 402,000. We still have a balance of 891,000 that is available. And accounts receivable, as of 12/31/24, we were at 255,000 versus last year we were at 333,000. Questions on White River Water?
Does not appear so.
Okay. So moving on to Queechee Water. This one had a revenue budget for 2025 of 515,000. As of 12/31/24, we have billed out 305,000 and some change. The total expenditures budgeted for 2025 is 532,600. And as of 12/31/24, we have expended 250,110, leaving a balance for the remainder of the year of 275,489. Accounts receivable as of 12/31/24 was $100,461 versus last year, which is 97,618. So the first two so far have been pretty close as far as the receivables go, and consistency wise, which is always a pleasant thing to see, because we do know that historically there was some challenges with the payments. And I believe the town manager mentioned earlier about COVID relief funds that were used for property taxes. They were also used for utilities, and the state defined utilities, which included water and wastewater. So and many of those programs have gone away, but if they do come up and they're available, per IDA's recommendation, we have been including flyers in with the billing that we've sent out to our residents as they become available. Oops, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions on Queechee Water?
No, it doesn't look so.
Okay. So moving on to White River Wastewater, which is Fund 60. The total revenues budgeted for 2025 was 1.9 million and some change. And as of 12/31/24, we have billed 1.2 million. The total expenditures for 2025 was budgeted at 1.9 million. And as of 12/31/24, we have utilized 674,625, leaving a balance available to complete the fiscal year of 1.2 million and some change. The accounts receivable balance as of 12/31/24 was $467,083, versus in 12/31/23, it was $544,906. Any questions on Fund 60?
Does not appear so.
Okay. So the last one that we have is Queechee Wastewater, which is Fund 65. The total revenues budgeted for 2025 was 1.2 million. And as of 12/31/24, we have billed 725,000. The expenditures for 2025 was 1.2 million. And as of 12/31/24, we have expended 749,000, leaving a balance of $508,102. And as far as the accounts receivable goes, the balance as of 12/31/24 was 266,819 versus 12/31/23 was 269,314. This fund is a little bit higher than the 50%. Not concerned with that. It has to do when their debt payments are due. So we're if you take the debt payments out, we would be on track where we needed to be. Any questions on Fund 65?
Nope.
So if I'm correct, the only follow-up I have would be to find out about why solid waste has the higher accounts receivable for 12/31/24 versus 12/31/23. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep, I think so.
If the board doesn't object, I'd be curious what that reasoning is.
Sounds good to me.
I'm sorry, did you say yes?
Yep, so that's the only thing that the board is interested for follow-up detail, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And then any other questions for Gail? I mean, you're not going to go through the detailed. Oh, sorry, Gail, you're still screen sharing.
How's that?
That's better. Like that's where your presentation is you're not gonna go into the detailed sheets, I'm sure, no. But I really appreciate you including them in the packet because it is just like, yeah, I think it's really helpful to have that level of detail. I really appreciate it. Any other questions for Gail regarding the year-to-date report?
Like exceptional. It's really good to see these numbers come before us, and it's good to know that we're on the right path.
Yeah, and so when will the next one be? It's just, you're doing these quarterly, right?
Correct. It will be the end of April, beginning of May, because the next one will be ending March 31st, and we can't produce those financials until we have all the bills for March. So, excuse me, yeah, for March. So hopefully we can be the end of April, at the latest, the beginning, the first week of May.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Gail. I hope your injury heals quickly.
Yeah,
There's more.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got
The tip. Oh, yeah, you're
audit
presenting the tip.
engagement letters. Don't forget that.
Yes, we do. And I don't think it's necessary to share the screen for that. It's annually, the town's required to have an independent financial audit, which we just had a presentation a few months ago regarding our FY24. And believe it or not, very shortly, we're going to start doing our testing for FY25. So it's coming on very, very fast. And what I'm going to be asking for tonight is for the board to authorize the select board chair or the select board vice chair and the town manager to accept the engagement letters from our audit firm, which is Mudgett, Jennett, Krog, and Weisner. They were selected by the board through the RFP process back in October. And so this is kind of more of a formality because they were selected for the vendor, but because of the amount of the contract that we have with them, it does require board approval. And in accordance with the RFP that they put together, the first part is $38,500, which is for the general fund. And then the second part of it is $4,300 for the audit services of our TIF fund. And I do have a recommendation. We can't do anything about it this year, but I have been considering recommending to the board that the general fund shouldn't carry the burden for the entire audit because part of it is includes the enterprise fund. So I think as we look at the 27 audit, we should consider whether or not we want to allocate that expense across the enterprise funds as well. But we can talk about that in the fall when we start doing the 27 budget. But for this evening, I believe that you have the motion in front of you and what the recommendation is to have the engagement letters authorized, executed, and that way we can start our FY25 audit process.
Any questions for Gail regarding the audit proposal? I do have one, Gail. I'm trying to get to the sorry, trying to get to the letters of engagement themselves. I'm just curious, so if the recommended motion is to just approve the proposal, does that include both the TIF audit and the general and the town audit?
Correct.
Like-
The engagement letters, correct. For,
Okay.
yep.
Well, it says, just to accept, I'm just wondering if we need to either make two motions or indicate that it's for both agreements. And we're
Yeah, I think
authorized.
Yeah, probably putting it authorizing for both of them, one being the audit for, the acceptance of the audit services, and specifically, for the town of Hartford, and then another one, acceptance of the audit services specifically for the TIF fund. Even though the TIF fund's under the town of Hartford, they are two separate engagement letters.
And are we authorizing the town manager to sign that or the chair?
It needs to have a board chair or vice chair or any board member that the board would like. Normally it's the board chair or the vice chair, and the town manager has to sign it. There has to be two signatures on each one.
Okay, and does that need to be reflected in the motion or not?
It does.
Am I looking at
If you
the-
go up one page, I think, Kim, there's another recommended motion on 67.
Oh, I was looking at was the other one from like last year? Yeah, from October. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
That's what I was confused, but my bad.
Yeah, no, the one from October was just where the RFP was presented and the board actually selected them as our vendor. I just put that in there for background.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. Okay. Any questions for Gail about this?
So it's two motions or?
No, just
One
one.
motion.
I think it could be one motion
You
and
can say
include
for
the
the
TIF.
town, for the TIF.
Right.
yeah, so
I can make that motion. if you
That-
want.
that would be great if any.
Okay, I move that the select board authorize the select board chair or vice chair or other member and John Haverstock, town manager, to sign the FYE 2025 financial audit service engagement letters with Mudgett, Janae, and Crow Wisner. $38,500 per acceptance of town of Hartford, Vermont audit service on 10/1/24 paid by the general fund. And number two, $4,300 per acceptance of town of Hartford, Vermont audit services on 10/1/2024 paid by the TIF fund.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, Lanny Collins,
Yeah,
second.
you really shouldn't be seconding.
There we go. And then any more discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes 5-0.
Yeah,
Thank you
sorry.
again, Gail.
Thank you.
Kim, can I just, are we cognizant of time? I don't know if we have Chris Brickell waiting in the wings for us.
Yes,
Okay, we're behind schedule, so.
yes.
We are, but we also
And we're
have to
finishing with
schedule-
Gail now.
Yeah.
And I don't think Chris Holsworth needs us for very long. Is that correct?
Okay.
Can I just make a couple final comments and then I will leave it to Chris?
Please.
I just wanted to say thank you, Kim, for your many years of service. I don't think that it's any secret. We've had different opinions of things, but I certainly think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing and what's best for the residents of Hartford. I wish you the best, and I know that you won't be a stranger, and I look forward to still speaking with you on many things. Mary, I know you're running unopposed, and so I expect that I'll see you probably next month. And then Lanny, best wishes. I don't really have any words. I think you I think you and I just say it the way that it is. I have a lot of respect for you and I appreciate everything that you've done for the town and continue to do for the town. And I hope to see you next month. And if not, I know you as well will not be a stranger. And I look forward to having ongoing conversations with you. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gail.
Thanks, Gail.
Okay, so now we are going to, we need to close the select board or could we just open a public hearing?
I think you should suspend or what's the word?
Recess?
Recess and open a public hearing.
Okay, so at this time, at 7:30, we will recess the select board and open a public hearing on Hartford RF 1-271 CSO abatement project. And welcome Chris Halsworth. to presentation.
Do we have to take any action on this?
No.
No. Okay.
All right. Good evening. Bear with me. I have Brian's computer here and no cord, so I'm gonna try to get it done as
Do you want me to screen share anything?
well as soon as it gets up here. So as I do this, I'll just talk. We're all familiar with the CSO loans, planning loans, construction loans that we have obtained over time. Our engineers, Jason Booth may be on,
He is.
yeah, and he's going to be available for us for questions.
I just made him a panelist, so.
All right, and I'm waiting to become a panelist.
Oh, sorry. And under Brian,
Yeah.
I got it now.
Okay, so part of the requirements for the funding source and the federal government is they issued, the Water Division, Investment Division, issued a finding of no significant impact by the project. We have to conduct this hearing to gather public comment and take their questions, answer them the best we can, record it all, take notes, minutes, and provide it to the state. We also have a 30-day period that's open right now where they can give us questions and comments and that we would answer and report to the state. So tonight, and I'm not, there we go. And there it is. We have a slight PowerPoint presentation here to present, to go over the hearing, explain the hearing, what it's about, and the impacts of the project. And then after I'm done with that, I'll ask you to open it to questions if you don't have questions, and then open it to statements or comments from the public.
Okay.
We'll see if I can get.
If you could speak up a little, Chris, that would be
Okay.
helpful.
Yeah. All right. So the purpose of the hearing tonight is to present the project to you and the public. And it's a requirement of our funding source and to gather public comments and questions. So it's pretty simple. Project locations. We have one in Hartford Village, which is along Route 14 by the post office. And we have two in Wilder. One is on Pasumsic Avenue. It's a catch basin that's connected to the sewer system. One is on Hartford Avenue. That's a catch basin that's connected to the sewer system. Then we have a bunch in White River. We have one on Lower Hyde Park, again, a catch basin connected to our sewer system. We have same issue on Bullard Street, a catch basin connected to our sewer system. And then within the Chambers Mobile Home Park along our easement right away for our sewer main, there are two catch basins connected to our sewer system. So site number one, it is on the westerly side of Pasumsic Avenue between 328 and 350. The project disconnects a catch basin that's currently connected to our sewer system. And that catch basin in that sewer system currently runs to a small pump station. So it does, and that pump station does have overflow potential.
So the idea is to disconnect it, and the soils in that area are extremely sandy. And the engineers have sized a dry well catch basin system that would filter the stormwater through the catch basin and the sandy soils around it and treat it before it ever reached groundwater, which is approximately the elevation of the Connecticut River. So it's quite a ways away. Site number 2 is along Maple Street, Maple Street, which is Route 14 and Hartford Village. That is in the vicinity of the Vermont homes on stilts and the post office. There is a combined drain line where some sewers are running into it. We would install a new sewer main down the street, intercept all of the sewers that are connected to that drain. And that drain would become just a storm drain, which we would reroute with a stabilized outlet to the brook nearby. So that would disconnect it. Site number 3 is at 15 Hartford Avenue and Wilder. The town, I won't get into the history, years and years ago installed the catch basin to alleviate some ponding and flooding at that residence after the house was built. That's connected to their sewer drain. So we would be disconnecting that, giving them a dry well system, unless we can find we found historical records and the basin is still tied to a drain line that goes through there. We're going to attempt to find the drain line and discharge it through the drain line before we approach it with a dry well. That was something that came up later. Bullard Street, it's up near the intersection of the Lily Pond Road. That one is a little more difficult. We actually have to install a closed storm drain to come down and meet a storm drain in order to pick that up and take care of it. Balch Avenue, which is going into the Chambers Mobile Home Park, that is connected to our system, and this would be disconnecting it and doing dry wells. Extremely sandy soil there as well. And towards the back on Spring Circle, the same situation is there. That would be disconnected into a dry well. Lower Hyde Park, we're going to be paving that this spring. Be nice to get that done prompt. That is also a catch basin that was just connected to our sewer system. So all of these attribute and contribute to overflow conditions, potential overflow conditions, which we haven't had of late, but we are under order to disconnect them. So that is it. The design details, pretty simple for most of them. The dry well system is an opportunity to catch the water that's currently going directly into the sewer in a dry well. Basically, it's a catch basin, so you can pick up debris, cans, litter out of it, suck it out. Bigger dirt will catch in the bottom of it, and then the hopefully cleaner stormwater would go through the layers of sand and gravel around it and be filtered, and then back into the ground, recharge the groundwater. So in the instance for like Maple Street, where we have a outfall, we have done a stabilization project there recently on the other side of the road, but this would be making sure that there's a stable outlet so we would avoid erosion. What's the environmental impacts? Really, this is about protecting public health. We're not creating any new environmental detrimental impacts. We're protecting public health and aquatic resources by eliminating opportunities for overflow, combined sewer overflows. There's small enhancements, such as when you are recharging the groundwater, those are low impact practices that we promote elsewhere. And in this case, they'll be in low-risk residential districts where the environmental harm is very limited. And that's partly why the state has deemed it a no significant impact by the project.
And it's more efficient and cost effective to treat sewage rather than stormwater.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not really allowed in this presentation to talk about the benefits of that, but that's
Strike that.
not part of the scenario here, but this is about the environmental
Okay.
impacts.
Do you want to stop screen sharing, Chris, and then
Yep.
take questions from the board first? Go
I
ahead.
know that you've said the environmental impacts will protect people and the environment, but there's probably going to be discussion or someone's going to call in about the storm water going into Lily Pond. I don't know. I mean, I've been past Lily Pond. I don't know what's there other than some wildlife and some vegetation, but
So
I-
this,
people are gonna be concerned, so I
Yeah.
just want some reassurance for them.
so currently, the amount going there is absurdly minimal.
Okay.
It's one culvert that we're adding. Currently, the stormwater does go there. The predominantly most of the stormwater in that neighborhood, we are rerouting one culvert worth there. So the state has called it a minimal.
Thank you.
Brandon?
Yes, thank you. I had asked Brian at a previous meeting, like our history of combined sewer overflows, events. And I was very surprised to learn that we have had effectively none in the last 5-10 years.
Yes, so that doesn't matter to the 1272 order we're under. So that's a kind of a moot point for as far as us coming into compliance. But that is true. The last project, and I was involved with it on the private end, was the co-op parking lot was disconnected. Once we disconnected the co-op parking lot, the side effect was we haven't had it since. So we're getting really close to taking care of all the problems. There are a few more problems, such as the roof drains downtown, which is a big issue that no one's ever known how to financially take care of.
Very familiar with that.
If the hotel block does get redeveloped, that would be a major boon.
So in other words, I guess my question is, this project will make it even less likely that we have a CSO event in the future. Is that correct?
Correct. That's the entire purpose of this.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? Any members of the public want to have any comments or questions? Not seeing any hands up online and no questions in the room. Anything before we close the public hearing, Chris?
Maybe Jason wants to add anything.
Oh yeah, Jason, would you like to add anything? He's on his
I don't, I think Chris did a great job. I don't really have much to add.
Okay, thank you.
I would just note that we close the floor to public comments and questions and then close the hearing. Yeah.
All right, so we will officially close the floor to public questions and comments. And then we will close this public hearing and resume the Hartford Select Board meeting.
Great.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everything's in order.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
All right, do you want to do like a
Quick break.
3-minute break?
Yeah.
All right, let's be back here at 7:40. Oh, 7:50, sorry.
It's impossible.
And maybe, John, do you want to introduce
Yes,
us to
yes.
Chris?
Thank him for his
on
patience.
the list. Okay, we are back. Thanks for all your patience. John, do you want to lead us off? on
Yes,
the-
we've got the director of the Vermont Justice Council here to speak with us tonight. Very gracious of him to offer his thoughts as to maybe how the state came about the process of developing a fair and impartial policing policy, and to what extent do municipalities have latitude to deviate from the proposed fair and impartial police policy for their own communities. We in Hartford, of course, have our welcoming Hartford ordinance, and the real question in the community is what steps beyond the fair and impartial policing policy can the town take to tailor its own version of the FIPP to maximize harmony with the welcoming Hartford ordinance. So I've given Mr. Brickell the WHO, and of course he's got his own copy of the FIPP, and hopefully he can give us some background about maybe the tension that exists between federal law, state law, and the FIP and Hartford's WHO. So thank you, Chris, for being patient, and maybe you can help us with some of these issues.
Well, thank you for having me, Mr. Haverstock, and I appreciate the availability to talk to your council. I don't really want to speak to all conflicts because all of this is not conflict. The Vermont Criminal Justice Council has had a fair and impartial policing policy for some time. It has been recently revamped with the help of advocate groups, migrant justice being one of them, but also stakeholder community groups that are from our council that met for numerous occasions. This was also met in part and parcel with our general counsel for the Criminal Justice Council, as well as attorneys from the Attorney General's office and their review of the policy as well. What I see in conflict right now is the fact that you've got two separate issues. You have the fair and impartial policing policy that I understand the town of Hartford, through its police department, has adopted a policy similar to the Vermont Criminal Justice Council's policy. That policy was reviewed per statute in conjunction with our general counsel and the Attorney General's office, and that policy was found to be in compliance with the council's policy. So all set and good. Then I'm aware of differences a little bit with the town of Hartford's welcoming ordinance. And so it does bring into a little bit of conflict, just some of the extra protections that the town of Hartford has decided to include within their ordinance. And that ordinance was reviewed by the Attorney General's office and found to have a couple of areas where there is some conflict with the council's policy as it stands right now. So there are a couple of avenues in which you could look at this in ways of resolving it. One is a very simple way, but may not be amenable to the town, would be to have a statement in your welcoming ordinance that says something to the effect of, if there's a conflict that arises between the FIP policy and the town of Hartford's welcoming ordinance, that the FIP policy prevails. Now, one of the concerns, and I don't want to speak for the Attorney General's office, but the dialogue that we've had back and forth is that the council has a policy, it's a statewide policy. Every agency has to come into compliance with that policy. The town of Hartford has enacted an ordinance, and that ordinance, as I read it, covers all town officials for the town of Hartford. So What that means is that you're not only directing your police department, but you're directing all employees of the town to follow this welcoming ordinance. So the ordinance, in effect, takes precedence over what the police department's policy is that they have adopted. However, big picture, the difference with that is that per state statute, if a policy is found to be out of compliance or there is a conflict with another policy that a town wants to have, the council's policy will take full effect and be enforced per state statute. So while towns do have the ability to add some additional protections, those protections can't run afoul of current federal law. And that's where I think a lot of the problems seem to be with the Hartford ordinances that's created. So in essence, the police department adopted a policy that was reviewed by our general counsel, as well as by the Attorney General's office, and found to be in compliance. So there was no issue there. And then the other concern came up about the town of Hartford's welcoming ordinance. And so there seems to be some consternation there on which takes precedence and how does that impact your police department, let alone the rest of your city departments, about how that ordinance is impacted. What I would suggest first off is don't listen to me. You talk to your general counsel or whoever gives legal services to the town of Hartford to have that discussion a little bit further. But also, I did have the communication with the Attorney General's office today that they would be open to perhaps a working group of the town of Hartford that could work directly with the Attorney General's office in trying to discuss those options, hash out those differences, and see if there was a resolution that could be made. So I could certainly put the town into direct contact with the Civil Division of the Attorney General's office and the attorney that I've been speaking with who reviews these current policies for us, if that's of help to the town of Hartford.
Could you phrase that last part again for me, please, Mr. Richter? This is Kim Souza, one of the members.
Sure. So from our perspective, what state statute says is if there's a policy that is out of compliance, that policy, whoever owns that policy, will work with the council and the Attorney General's office to bring that policy into compliance. If that can't be done, or if after attempts there is either defiance on the part of the town or the agency on that policy, or they don't want to follow it, state law says that the council's policy will take full force and effect. And that further implicates problems for agencies and their accessibility to the services provided by the council. So any training that they might want to come to at the academy would be closed off to that agency. And again, this is an ultimatum after any kind of resolution couldn't be reached. That's never happened before. There are only, to my knowledge now, 3 separate agencies that we are still working with to gain those compliances. That's the ultimate goal. We want to make sure that, you know, the towns are covered by the statewide policy, and that in addition to that, if there's anything that needs to be worked out, that we're working with that agency or that town to bring that policy into compliance so that it doesn't impact the police department in that town.
Chris, are you at liberty? Chris, are you at liberty?
Just to finish that thought was that we could, if it makes sense, we could arrange, I can provide you the contact information for the Attorney General's office, where if there was a working group or a couple of people in the town of Hartford that wanted to discuss directly with them this ordinance and see if there's some sort of language that would keep in line the ordinance that you want to have in effect, but would also come into compliance with the council's policy. That's better left for minds much greater than mine for the legalese to figure that out and make sure that both policies are in compliance.
Chris, are you at liberty to identify the other 3 agencies that you're currently working with to try to bring them into compliance?
I would rather not do that simply because they're in stages of compliance and I
Okay.
wouldn't want to complicate whatever
Yeah.
stages that they're in between our agency and the Attorney General's office.
I understand. Thanks.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Chris, I understand you don't want to do that for anyone you're working with, but can you divulge any agencies that you've reached a resolution with that you have already gone through that stages and reached that resolution process that perhaps we can reach out to? Can you divulge those, or you're not comfortable with that?
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't give you those agencies simply because most agencies adopted the council's policy. And we had few, calls to the council about if we added this section, would that be problematic? And those were handled between that town and our general counsel, where I was not a part of those conversations. So I wouldn't be able to give you accurate information on which towns they were. I only know of 3 outstanding simply because we have a current vacancy in our general counsel position. So I'm working directly with the AG's office to make sure that those 3 others come into compliance that we're working with.
And you stated earlier that one of the recommendations might be to have a enclosure on the fair and impartial policing policy that states that whenever the Welcoming Hartford ordinance and the fair and impartial policing policy are in conflict, the fair and impartial policing policy takes priority. Is that correct, the way I understood that?
The statewide fair and impartial policing policy is in full force and effect. It is placed onto that town's policy that they have accepted the council's policy if they cannot come into compliance.
No, but I mean ours that we currently have now, the fair and impartial policing policy that we currently have. You stated we could have an addendum to that stated when the town of Hartford's Welcoming Hartford ordinance and fair and impartial policing policy are in conflict, the fair and impartial policing policy shall take precedence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
The difference with your ordinance is that legally speaking, an ordinance is a little bit stronger than a policy. But the difference with the council's policy is that if other policies are not compliant, state law says that you come into compliance with the council's policy. So again, this is one of those areas where I think legal representation is best to understand the dynamics between an ordinance that you have adopted and you're holding all of your employees accountable to. Because like, for instance, one of the differences in your policy, in your ordinance and the town's, the police department's policy that they have adopted is the disciplinary feature. So if they're out of compliance within the policy of the council, discipline can be handled. Yours has a much wider range of other options available to them. So that is one small area legally that's just out of compliance. It doesn't necessarily mean that the protections that you're looking to afford can't be gained. It's just in some of the language of the differences of each component of the policy.
Thank you.
I certainly have questions and comments. Do any of you want to chime in before I
Go ahead.
I'd be happy to hear yours first.
Okay. Mr. Brickell, again, Kim Souza. Is the state statute that you're referencing that you're using as a basis for the model fit, is it the 20 VSA 2366?
Without having it in front of me, I believe that is correct.
And I don't know if the town manager shared this with you, but I'm just going to read, if I may, sort of my recommendation to the board and to the town manager and see what your response is to it. And it just, for context, like this is something, this is my very last select board meeting as a member, but I've been on the board since the Welcoming Hartford ordinance was adopted, and it was, though we didn't need to, we did actually put it on a ballot and have the town vote on it. So we feel pretty protective of it as it is. But so what my understanding is that Vermont Criminal Justice Council is requiring all municipalities to mirror that model policy for their departments, for their police departments. And my recommendation to the board and the town manager is that the Hartford's fair and impartial policing policy to remove the language allowing Hartford police officers, law enforcement to share citizenship status with federal agencies. And that request is based on the fact that 20 VSA 2366 A1 states, quote, such agencies and constables may include additional restrictions on agency members' communication and involvement with federal immigration authorities or communications regarding citizenship status or citizenship or immigration status, unquote. And so I guess with that guidance from state statutes, I'm curious if you think there is a world, whether like maybe if we do establish some kind of working group with the Attorney General's office, if we were to take out that language, if the BCJC would consider certifying our, or whatever the, authorizing our policy.
Understood. I think so. Without seeing what the final language is, and that was reviewed by both our council and the Attorney General's council, it would be hard for me to answer that question without specifically seeing what that removal and or modification of language is. And I have, for instance, like I have a rundown of the differences. It's kind of impossible for me to go through them with you without you having that policy in front of you. I'm happy to do that, to try to suggest where the differences are, if that's helpful. But that may not be as helpful if you don't have both the ordinance in front of you and or the policy.
Well, I do, and we could, but like I don't think we're not asking the state to authorize our ordinance, or like our welcoming Hartford ordinance is in place. Like that's not on the table for modification at this time. What is the topic of this is relating to the fair and impartial policing policy and modifications to that. And I think, I mean, I'm happy to get some other opinions, and I think there might be some other public comment on this, but if I pull up the current fair and impartial policing policy, I think it would be simply to just take out the parenthetic language around, let's see here, happy to pull this up, put this up on the screen if that's helpful. Anyway.
Can I say for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to take Chris up on his offer to share with us his comparison of the two documents, if you're willing to give that to me, just email it to me or whatever manner you'd like.
Sure, I can absolutely do that. I can also email, if it makes sense, the areas of disagreement that then you could review and
Yes.
either have that conversation with the Attorney General's office. One of the common pieces of the FIP policy that I have heard that has become problematic for the review that I've seen from the Attorney General's office is the removal of the parenthetical phrase in that policy, which I know has been suggested by some folks, but that is one of the legal areas that is problematic for the Attorney General's office and for our general counsel when reviewed, because they have found that to be in conflict with federal law. And so again, I don't want to speak to those legal issues because I am not an attorney. I am speaking to the advice that we've been given by both our attorney and the Attorney General's office, that very often what we hear is a section of removing the parenthetical phrase in that policy, which then is an area that they would like to change, and that is problematic. But absolutely, I can, if it's easier for a process to move quicker, what I can do is I can email the town manager, the contact person for the Attorney General's office, and I can highlight the 5 areas within the town of Hartford's ordinance that were different than our policy, which raised concern for the Attorney General's office.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
That would be very helpful. And yeah, I mean, I would recommend there be some kind of working group established to do this. And if there's an opportunity for civilian members to participate, I would put my hat in that ring.
Good. Certainly the new police chief as well.
Yeah, for sure. Other comments at this time, and we can take some comments from the public as well.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Hello, Mr. Brickell. Thank you.
Brickell.
Brickell. I'm so sorry, sir.
All right.
Hey, so you were mentioning that state law states that where there's a conflict between two things, your model FIP prevails. Is that what were those two things?
I'm sorry, what was those what?
You were saying that state law says that where there is a conflict between two things, then I suppose one of which would be your model FIP, that the model FIP prevails.
Correct. The state law mandates that the council, if there is a policy that is out of compliance, that we work with that agency in conjunction with the Attorney General's office to work out language that comes into compliance with the policy that was passed by the council. And if we're not able to do that, then there is another further sanction that an agency could face of non-compliance where they don't have access to the academy services. And again, that's not something that's happened, nor is that something that we look or want to do. What we want to do is be able to get agencies in compliance with the policy as stated in statute.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. It's interesting to me that that you're referring to state law in that case, stating this, because in my view, I'm seeing the part of state law that my colleague Kim here just read, and that would then be in direct conflict with this state law that you're referring to. So you know, I can read it again here, but I think you heard Ms. Souza when she said that you know, she described state law. I mean, it very explicitly states that communities may include additional restrictions on agency members' communication and involvement with federal immigration authorities or communications regarding citizenship or immigration status. So I'm not sure I'm sure what you're saying is true, but I'm very curious as to how it's you know, internally in conflict.
I guess what I'm saying is that within the policy and within state law, agencies and municipalities can add additional protections if they choose, so long as they don't conflict with federal law.
I'd be so curious. Thank you so much for clarifying that. I would be curious to kind of have a citation for that so I can kind of inspect. But I assume that's what this process you're describing will bring to light.
I'll certainly highlight all of the sections of statute for the town manager, and as well as I said, the sections within the town of Hartford's ordinance that were identified as problematic that needed to be resolved. Now, again, having said that, the police department has already adopted a policy that has been reviewed and approved by both our general counsel and the Attorney General's office. The difference is that those additional protections that the town of Hartford is included in their ordinance go beyond the scope of what the Attorney General's office review felt was
Yes,
allowable.
of course. we're trying to bring our own policy into internal, so that our internal conflicts are resolved, right? Between our FIP that we proposed to you and you guys ratified, and this Welcoming Hartford ordinance, which our voters passed by overwhelming majority 4 or 5 years ago now. So my last question is about kind of the specifics of that law you're referring to and sort of whose discretion it is. I can't imagine that the state law is very explicitly describing the kind of punitive actions of refusing to certify officers or refusing to ratify or refusing to train officers. Like I would assume that the state law leaves that up to the discretion of your agency, doesn't it?
That is outlined in statute that, again, without having it right in front of me, and I'm not in an area where I could even get it in front of me at the moment. It is in statute that requires that compliance with our policy. And if that policy is not within compliance and we can't reach an agreement with those agencies that we're trying to resolve those with, that is the sanction, which is the non-ability for an agency to utilize the services of the academy.
So the sanction itself is outlined in state law?
Correct.
All right. I look forward to reading that. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be a helpful resource. Any other board members before we take questions? I mean, we can still follow up, but it's not a big deal. Do have a hand up from Will Lambeck. Go ahead, Will, when you're ready.
Hey, good evening, members of the Select Board. My name is Will Lambeck. I'm with the nonprofit organization Migrant Justice. Some of you I know very well. Some of you I don't know yet. Migrant Justice was very much involved in the deliberations of the Select Board and throughout the town of Hartford in the run-up to the passage of the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance, and we were very grateful to be included in those conversations and share the experience of our membership of immigrant families throughout the state of Vermont. We've also been very involved in the process of updating the model FIP policy with the Criminal Justice Council. We were very heartened to see the Select Board and then the town of Hartford overwhelmingly pass the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance. And we believe that it properly sets the role of the town of Hartford and its employees as one separate from federal immigration enforcement, that Hartford should not be in the business of surveilling, rounding up, detaining, and deporting immigrants in the town. And we think it's very important that the town's fair and impartial policing policy remain consistent with the protections in the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance. And unfortunately, because of recent changes within the Hartford Police Department's policy, those no longer align. There's been a discussion, I know, about what can Hartford do in relationship to the state's model policy. And I think it's really important to be clear on this because the state statute that we've been referencing, 20 VSA 2366, was last modified on this matter in 2019. The law hasn't changed since then. What's changed is a new and frankly inexplicable interpretation by the Criminal Justice Council that contradicts the plainly written text of the statute and also contradicts the legislative intent behind it. In 2019, this statute was updated to include the language that was previously read out that explicitly allows municipalities and other jurisdictions to include protections that go above and beyond the protections found in the state model policy, and in particular to include additional restrictions on agency members' communication and involvement with federal immigration authorities or communications regarding citizenship or immigration status. This language was drafted collectively by Migrant Justice, the Attorney General's Office, and the ACLU as a compromise position to allow municipalities to further strengthen their policies. And colloquially, it's known as the state model being the floor, but not the ceiling. Hartford and many other jurisdictions availed themselves of the permissive language in this statute to do just what was intended by the legislature, to provide increased protections for immigrant communities. When Hartford made those changes were ratified at that point by the Attorney General's Office, acting in concert with the Criminal Justice Council. And that happened in jurisdictions all over the state who made those changes using the authority granted to them by this statute. And in the past year, there's been a reversal of that well-set precedent and an inexplicable reversal that we don't think reflects, again, the statute or the intent behind it. So we really encourage the town of Hartford to stand by the decision it made in 2020 to maintain the protections in the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance and to align its fair and impartial policing policy with those protections. At the end of the day, this is about the town following the wishes of its voters and the wishes of its residents and making a clear statement through ordinance and policy that Hartford will not be in the business of deportations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will. There's another hand up from, oops. From the Center for Justice Reform. There's two more hands up at the moment. And you can go ahead when you're ready. Oh, it's got a baby.
I'm here. Hi, sorry. It got a little late, so now I have a baby sleeping on me. My name is Brett Stokes. I am a professor at Vermont Law and Graduate School, and I'm also the director of the Center for Justice Reform Clinic, which is the immigration aligned clinic on campus at Vermont Law and Graduate School. I am here today to speak out on behalf of the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance and in favor of what member Kim Souza suggested, which is removing the parenthetical, which in the model policy is present at 67. And essentially what that says is that the essentially says that the, excuse me, I lost my train of thought.
I have it up if you'd like.
No. But anyway, at any rate, there's a contention here that the fair and impartial policing policy that was ratified by the state of Vermont is in conflict with the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance, and that much is true. However, the question remains, is it permissible for Hartford to maintain its Welcoming Hartford Ordinance? And my contention is yes. And specifically, I'm not going to get too into the legalese. I'm happy to continue to I'm happy to continue to speak with members of the council as well as that. But if Vermont and specifically towns like Hartford want to protect human rights of all Vermonters, we need to interpret the federal law specifically here narrowly. Specifically, that's 8 USC 1373. That law does not establish or mandate any local law enforcement agencies to share information with the federal government, period. Additionally, the subsections in that federal statute, which we're speaking about here, do not require local agencies to collect any information from any individual, period. So the contention that a welcoming Hartford policy, which essentially prohibits from sharing citizenship information, is at odds with federal law when there's no affirmative obligation put onto that locality, that municipality, to collect that information in the first place, is kind of baffling to me. But beyond that, this is a area that is not settled law. Specifically 8 USC 1373, which is the federal statute at issue here. A number of different jurisdictions in the United States have found this particular statute to be at odds with the Constitution. Many different provisions, specifically the 10th Amendment. So I believe that when talking about the Fair and Impartial Policing Act, in its inception and ratifying it with that parenthetical that we've kind of been dancing around tonight, was a pretty cautious move. And I think that if we as Vermonters and you as the town of Hartford want to do right by our non-citizen neighbors and community members, I think that keeping this policy as it's written, the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance, and considering removing that language does not put you at odds with federal law, and in fact only puts you at odds with a potentially dubious inconstitutionality statute. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. And for the minutes in the record, Lana, because I think he's just on there as Justice Reform, that it's Brett Stokes. Okay, and we've got two more hands up. Do you want to jump in?
I do want to point out that Chief Sheldon is on the call.
I would,
to the extent we want to hear his
I'd
perspective
love
on
to hear
things.
Chief Sheldon's state position, but I do have a question before that. If this came down to a legal battle of the town, battle of wills, so to speak, would it end up being argued out on a state level or a district level?
Well, there'd have to be a conflict, and thus far, there's no case in controversy. This federal government has not asked Hartford for this police department for immigrant information, and the police department is not prepared to give it to them.
No.
So we're talking a little bit about hypotheticals at the moment, but yeah, there is actual conflict among the documents that we're talking about.
What I'm concerned about, though, is
People can't sue unless there's been a situation in which somebody's rights have been violated,
understood.
or
I
there's
completely
an
understand
actual conflict or damage to
that. But
someone.
what I'm getting is that our Criminal Justice Council has stated that if we don't come in compliance with what they have for a state fair and impartial policing policy, we won't be able to send officers to the police academy. They won't certify anybody. And if that were to come to no, we're going to fight you on this and we want to take it to a legal battle,
Right.
that would be a state. I mean, I see that being more of the lawsuit than anything else, because if Hartford were to push back and say, no, we don't wish to do that, and I'm just not sure where that would be fought out at.
Right. I don't know either, but I do know that that's probably many missed opportunities from now.
I completely agree with you, but just definitely still want to be able to take advantage of what the police academy has for offering for training for our officers.
Okay, so Chief Sheldon, if you want to chime in at any time, maybe you can either just do that or raise your hand and I'll take these other comments in the meantime, if that's okay. All right, next we have Esme Cole. Oh, and Chief Sheldon does have his hand up now, so let's go. go ahead, Chief Sheldon, jump in.
I just want to say that I think, we can debate this all night long, but I think Executive Director Chris Brickell is correct. And this needs to be a working group to figure out with the legal, well, not the legal department, but the attorney for the town of Hartford and the Attorney General and the town manager and the incoming police chief with this working group to resolve this. We're not going to resolve this tonight. And debating it tonight just seems to be spinning our wheels. This won't be something that's going to be fixed right away tonight. So, Laney, I think to answer your question about the training, we are currently in compliance with the state of Vermont policy, FIP policy. What the controversy is the FIP policy is not in compliance with the ordinance. So the PD is currently stable in that regard, and we're able to send our officers to the academy. And again, as the executive director said, that's a long way down the road for sanctions to get to that point. But I think the working group is the only way we're going to resolve this. We can listen to all these different advocate groups and in reference to the Attorney General's opinions, but what we need to do is get everybody in the same room and get legal opinions that the town can make an actual decision on instead of listening to everybody just simply speak their mind and get their voice heard. This is just spinning our wheels at this point.
I just want to make sure that our officers are able to, for the foreseeable future, short range, be able to receive the training that we need at the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. That's my biggest concern right now, is that them just shutting us off completely, saying, no, you have to do this immediately. So that's my concern.
No, we're good for now. As the executive director said, we do have a policy that's in compliance with the academy and with Vermont statute, but we're not in compliance with the WHO ordinance. So this conflict is an internal conflict right now. Now, if the working group comes out at the end, whether that be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months down the road and says, no, we're changing the FIP policy to be out of compliance, then that issue will, raise its ugly head again about the training component and the sanctions at the academy.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Yep. Okay, Esma, you go ahead if you're ready.
All right. Hello, everyone. Esma Cole from Hartford. I'm at home with the flu and I'm not doing too well, unfortunately. So I will probably be briefer than I would be otherwise. I'm pretty shocked actually to hear that there's this assertion being made that the Fair and Impartial Policing Act has been deemed to be in conflict with the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance, because we actually adjusted the Fair and Impartial Policing Act to prevent this precise situation back in 2019. And that was specifically by amending subsection A or subdivision A1 of that policy. And even to double down on that, we added a subsection B that would say that the Criminal Justice Council should review the policies to ensure that you comply with subdivision A. And, that we were expecting, sorry, I'm just looking through my notes here, but I really, this interpretation that's, being said that it's true that it's the Fair and Impartial Policing Act is in conflict with the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance is exactly the opposite of what legislative intent for the Fair and Impartial Policing Act was, we intended to do in the legislature. So it's it is really concerning to hear these assertions. And many courts also have deemed that the specific policy that the police office has been referring to is actually unconstitutional. So it's, there's many layers to this, but I think, I am a little bit confused as to why this is coming up again. We knew, Trump kind of said a lot of big words to threaten us with this in the past. And so we took efforts at the state level to protect our towns who wanted to adopt ordinances as such by adopting the Fair and Impartial Policing Act. So it is kind of unfortunate that we're here today in this situation again. And I will say too, the amendment that was added in 2019 for the Fair and Impartial Policing Act was, approved by the Attorney General. So I'm confused as to how that precedent is being overridden and what changed, because really nothing, that state law has been state law since then and approved by the Attorney General. So I don't think that we can just kind of rescind that decision there. But anyway, I'm happy to continue this dialogue when I have, more of the legal documentation in front of me and I'm feeling better. But I appreciate you hearing me out from the legislative intent perspective.
Thank you, Esme. Hope you feel better soon.
Thank you.
One more hand up online and one more in the room. Do you want to go online first, or do you want? Okay. Go ahead, Kira, when you're ready.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kira Kelly, Kelley. I am not a Hartford resident. I'm a member of the Vermont chapter of the National Lawyers Guild. We are an association of attorneys, lawyers, legal workers, and law students that do pro bono legal support for people that are working for human rights of all stripes and sorts. And I've been involved with this campaign supporting the voters of Hartford in adopting the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance since it was first put on the ballot many, many years ago. And I just wanted to weigh in support of Kim's proposition and kind of try to break this down as I see it. It feels a little bit like deja vu because, like others have said, we had all of these conversations before and nothing has changed aside from the flavor of the sentiments that we are feeling from the person who is currently in office, but the laws themselves, the groundwork here has not changed aside from the Hartford FIP now being in violation of the law. So again, the 5 layers of law that are at issue here as I see it, there's the FIP, there's the ordinance, the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance, there's state law, there's federal law, and then there is the federal constitution. And if the concern is to not break the law, that concern is most directly invoked by having a fair and impartial policing policy that is in direct violation of a binding law, the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance. And so I think it's important to really make sure that we are valuing these principles, like not as just kind of straw men to hide behind for whatever politics are going on here, and just like respecting what the voters made clear that their desire and intention was. As Kim articulated, the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance is not in conflict with state law. A FIP that is compliant with the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance would also not be in conflict with state law. And like we heard from, I think it was Brett who said this, that the real concern here that we already discussed and that the town appeared to have resolved back in 2019, 2020 was this purported conflict between the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance and 8 U.S.C. 1373. Again, nothing has changed since this was discussed the first time. Like, that federal law is still subject to conflicting interpretations, has been overturned in many jurisdictions. It's a controversial open question as to whether that law should even be on the books in the first place because of its direct conflict with Supreme Court interpretations of the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment, again, it goes back to police powers. So that's why we are here, because we are discussing the powers of police that are squarely within the states and towns to regulate. And it does beg the question of why law enforcement are so keen to betray the self-identified safety concerns of their voters, that the voters adopted the Welcoming Hartford Ordinance. They are the source of power for the government of this community, their wishes, their consent. And so it is important for the voters to have that say, and it is important for law enforcement to be able to make those decisions themselves about where information gets shared without having federal immigration authorities come in and cut in and try to intervene in that. I will just say one more thing about what we're seeing right now is one person who is in violation of a lot of the doctrine of separation of powers, that there's these branches of the government are supposed to have checks and balances on each other, and we are seeing a power grab from one branch of the federal executive branch. And as people who care about democracy, we should be really not going into preemptive obedience. Like, we should not be giving up our constitutional rights and preemptively obeying when different people try to overstep the bounds of their constitutional authority. So the Constitution here is what is the thing we should all be adhering to and using as our guide in times when there is, you know, people trying to act in ways that go against the values of democracy. The 10th Amendment is clear. State law is clear. This is something that the town is allowed to do. It's been discussed before. The voters have spoken. I appreciate the care and attention that is being put to this issue, and I'm happy to chat more about this with anybody who wants to have more of a conversation about these important questions. But I would just encourage people to not preemptively obey when unconstitutional power grabs are afoot. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kira. Okay, there's no more hands up at the moment online, I think. Wait, yeah. Sheldon has his hand up, but he does not appear to be on here anymore. I did not kick him off, I swear. Maybe I'll look for him, see if he comes back on. Go ahead, Allie. Sure.
Hello, Allie Defension, White River Junction. It sounds like a lot more discussion needs to be had. I look forward to those discussions. I will be at those discussions, and would really similarly appreciate a side-by-side comparison of where there may be conflict, even though it seems like that's also the idea that there's a conflict might be in conflict. And a question I have, which I don't think can be answered tonight, but which I would be curious about in terms of the information to gather from maybe the town attorney, the attorney general, and others is, and it sounds like this is also in conflict as well, that it might not even conflict if we were not to comply with the state FIP, that it might not even conflict with federal law. But I would be curious to know what the consequences would be if it were deemed that we were in conflict with federal law. I'm not saying we should seek that outcome, to be clear, but just to understand the full scope of the stakes and the spectrum of what those consequences could be in those various directions. Maybe that's, again, more work for the working group or whatever conversations are to come. But in closing, just to say, I sincerely hope that we can pursue whatever option possible to keep the WHO intact and to maintain our WHO. Again, Kira stated it really wonderfully. The voters have approved this. And I understand we want to be conscious of and mitigate legal risk. I certainly understand that, having been on the board at one time, and there's immense human risk and human costs that we're talking about in these times. So anyway, thank you all for offering multiple phases of the discussion too, for folks to engage and still be a part. And I look forward to more. I will certainly be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. Sally. Okay, Lanny?
Yeah. So what I see right now is that Hartford stays the course by abiding by the WHO and get together, well, get a legal opinion first off, find out where the conflict arises, but stay on the path we're on right now. That's what I see our path forward is. We can't make any decisions until we have all the information in front of us. And there's nothing wrong with what we're doing right now. So we have time to address this. It's not like it's the wolf's at the door kind of thing.
But yeah,
Well,
no, I feel you.
We're not violating our policy now. I mean, we're providing protections under the WHO. Okay, so we're not violating that. And Hartford's not in the deportation business, so we're providing the protections. So it's not as if we're in a mad rush to solve this within the next month. So it's something that's going to take the time and the assessment of the conflicts to move forward accurately.
Understandably, there are select board members who want the town's FIP to be in greater harmony with the WHO.
Oh, I understand that, but
And
we're
so
not.
that's what we can do, learning from the academy, what they view the areas of conflict to be, and could be the platform on which we negotiate with the academy, what additional things we can add to our FIP or remove from our FIP
What I
to
understand
make
is-
greater harmony with the WHO.
Yeah, from what I understand, the FIP's not the issue, the who's the issue.
No,
That's-
anyway.
But the
okay.
FIP, so the FIP, so explain it, because I'm lost here, because I thought they said that the FIP is in accordance with the Criminal Justice Council.
That's because the Hartford Police have adopted basically verbatim the state's
Oh,
FIP.
okay, now I understand. All right, now I got you. All right, that's why it's in accordance.
Brandon?
Thank you. Speaking about, we don't have to do anything right now. We're not complying with federal immigration authorities right now. And Mr. Town Manager, you had earlier in the meeting said federal immigration authorities have not asked for us to assist them, nor is the town prepared to give information to them. But to be clear, that's not entirely true from where I'm standing, because and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but if any future police chief wishes, because it is currently a part of the FIP policy that we currently have in place, the chief could direct officers to comply with the FIP and not comply with the WHO.
I'm told by Chief Sheldon, and the same commitment has been given by Connie Kelly, that they have no intention to cooperate with federal agencies seeking such information.
All right, thank you. I have one other thing, which is Representative Esme Cole on here brought to light some information I was not aware of, which is seemingly in 2019, some of the folks who helped originate the WHO apparently made our FIP at the time comport well with the WHO. And so at some point between 2019 and today, a new FIP or an alteration to the FIP was made. And Rep. Cole said that the one we did in 2019 was approved by the Attorney General. And so I'm just interested in that sort of forensic path. If you
Maybe
could
that's a
provide that
question
to
for,
us.
maybe that's a question for Mr. Brickell. I don't know that he's been at the academy back to 2019, but he might be able to explain the changed approach they've taken to the contents of the FIP since 2019. I don't know.
Right. That said, if they changed something, we locally would have had to separately move to adopt a change, correct?
The departments can adopt their own policies. The select board does not have to approve department policies, correct? I mean, so the police department, they did adopt the new BCJC recommended policy FIP in July, I think, of 2024.
So that was when the change.
Yeah.
But that's when Hartford's FIP changed.
Right.
But you're asking, I think, what changed at the academy that then made the town of Hartford consider changing its FIP?
I'd be interested in that answer too, but I actually
Okay.
was mainly thinking
I
about
see.
the
Yeah,
data
I mean, that was part of the negotiation, like when, and I think Mr. Brickell is still on, that basically there was a process recently in March and April when, and I sent some of that documentation to the board, which was like the memos from ACLU and then National Lawyers Guild and Migrant Justice, as the Vermont Criminal Justice Council was updating their model fair and impartial policing policy. They said it was a group effort with the Attorney General and with those organizations. And this was what the outcome was. And so not everyone was satisfied with the outcome. And, I think when Chief Sheldon was here a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about this, we talked about threading the needle, right? We talked about the fact that if the current policy does basically prohibit law enforcement from collecting immigration status, I do think that that's the recommendation, is to kind of get a working group and talk with the with VCJC, with the Attorney General, because I do think there is a way to get to a place where we can all be satisfied. And I mean, for me, it's just taking out that parenthetical sentence, which I have shared and can share again, but and specifically, like I did just go and check the section B, the other element of that state statute that Esme Cole referenced, and it literally does say that the Vermont Criminal Justice Council needs to make sure that this section 1A of that Vermont statute is in place. So yeah, it's like, it's complicated, but I honestly don't think it needs to be that complicated. So
I appreciate your point where the town, by simply not collecting this information, would not be in a position to share it.
I mean, that is one aspect, but it's also, it's explicitly said in there that they can share that information. So I would ask if it's basically the will of the board to ask the town manager to establish this sort of working group on the topic.
I will certainly gather information from the academy. They've offered to give it to us, and I'm going to expect it soon. We're going to see the town's attorney tomorrow on another matter, and we could kind of spitball an approach that we might take. The chief, myself, maybe the town's attorney, and whoever else we would think would be appropriate, but not to overload the conference room that we might end up in, to see about where there's play in the joints to reach some kind of agreement that threads that needle.
Before we start a new committee for that, I think it'd be advisable to wait till you have a new sitting board.
Yeah, but I don't think it's I mean, well, he referred to it as a working group. I guess it could be a committee, but it doesn't have to be, it could just be an ad hoc.
People representing the town to talk to the state or talk to the academy.
And nothing would happen without the board's.
Yeah,
consent.
certainly any kind of resolution would have to be ratified by town entities.
All right, well, to be continued, but
We'll just wait for the town manager to get back to us with information requested, I guess, right? Is that where we're at?
yeah, well, I won't be on those threads anymore. So I will, I'll try to keep updated. I will be asking about it as just a resident and just checking in on the status and volunteering myself to participate.
I'm sure Mary and Brandon can forward that stuff to you.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, we should thank everybody who participated in tonight's
Yeah,
discussion, especially the patient and gracious Mr. Brickell.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And this is a conversation to be continued. Thanks, Will. Thanks, May. Okay, so I'm gonna take you guys off of this. All right, yeah, they're all like that. Okay, so thank you all for that discussion. Sorry, we went a lot longer than usual, but you know, I just wanted to hold on to this position as long as. Anyone have commission reports in this brief period since we haven't seen each other?
Hartford Historic Preservation Committee met last week. I was online for that, and basically discussion about a new sign for Wilder, Gilmore Park there, right there. And they're discussing basically sign details, what to get, and it's still in the works. So that's basically the discussion about that, about the historical aspect of Wilder, that area.
Is it replacing existing signs or new signs?
Yeah, I believe it's a replacing existing sign.
Mary, any commission
No,
reports?
nothing.
Brandon?
No.
Nor do I, though. The planning commission did meet last night, but I opted to go to budget and candidates night. So, but they are really good about posting their minutes very quickly. So just take a look at that page if you're interested. Okay, on to consent agenda. And anyone want to?
I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the select board approve meeting minutes of February 18th, 2025, and approve a future meeting of March 1st, 2025, which is a town and school district meeting. A organizational meeting for the select board of March 6th, 2025, and a regular select board meeting of March 18th, 2025.
Okay, we have a motion by Brandon. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mary seconds. Any discussion?
Well, don't forget Saturday though, we have town meeting day, so.
It's on
Yeah,
there.
it's on there.
Yeah.
At 10 o'clock.
Yeah, just make sure everybody's reminded to be at 10 o'clock. So
Thank you. Okay,
Kind
all
of
those in
required
favor?
thing.
I'll be there if you've got donuts.
I can buy donuts.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous, 5-0. And I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mary already moved to adjourn at 8:53. Is there a second?
Second.
By Ida. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank
Thank you very much.
It's a shame because school and town meeting committee usually got together and had the committees show up ahead of time, town meeting.